What I'm about to reveal in this video is worth more than any college degree or consulting call you may have taken regarding e-commerce, because in this video, I'm going to show you the exact strategy step by step which we use to explode this bulk fashion e-commerce brand to over $122,000 per month in revenue in just 30 days. And keep in mind, this is the same exact brand which, if we compare to the previous 30-day period, this is a brand which was actually doing no more than $30,000 to $40,000 per month in revenue, mostly coming from Google Ads, which you can see right over here. So this is a 242% increase in just a 30-day period. And although this may seem like an insane number, the actual strategy which helped us achieve this was a pretty simplistic approach which you can implement as well. Now, first things first, looking at GA4, because this store does not use Shopify backend, it uses a completely different CRM. But in the last 30 days, this brand has done roughly $35,000 in revenue. Across the board, we have seen a positive increase, and this mostly came because of the paid shopping increase from Google Ads, which then redistributed to things such as organic traffic and so on and so forth. So this brand is heavily reliant on Google Ads campaigns with a little bit of Bing ads and mostly SEO. They do not do any types of Meta ads or TikTok ads, mainly because, as I said earlier, this is a bulk fashion e-commerce brand, meaning it's a custom t-shirt, custom pants, shorts, etc. brand where you can get your own custom logo imprinted on these products. And because it's a custom logo sort of approach, they do not sell these products usually on a per item basis. Rather, you have to buy in bulk, minimum of 5 to 10 orders for that given product. So this brand technically goes after a B2B audience, but also at the same time, now because of our approach, they're now able to go on the D2C side as well. But more on the brand itself, this was a brand which came to us, which is, by the way, under my Google Ads agency, Euro Marketing, roughly 45 days ago, around July 2nd to July 3rd of 2025. And the main issue that they had was, number one, Performance Max campaigns were in a decline. Number two, their Google Search Console had actually gotten completely hacked by somebody, and as a result, because they changed a lot of the things on the Google Search Console, they lost 90% of their organic traffic, which is why the brand had basically dropped to $35,000 in per month ad spend. Now, if we look at the last 12 months in total revenue, we can see the bigger picture of how things actually were moving along for this brand. Now, during this time, as we can see, things look a lot better. If we look at a month-to-month basis, we can understand that this brand used to actually do pretty decent numbers back in the day when things weren't so bad. And if we go on over to the homepage, we should get a clearer idea of the overall revenue and how things were looking in that aspect as well over a 12-month period. So last 12 months, we can see that the overall order revenue was 1.2 million. However, this was the time period when they actually ended up getting hacked. And after that happened, they had to completely restart from scratch. This was a time period when they actually shut up the ads to even figure things out and to understand what to do moving forward. So this was like coming up from zero again. One real kind of issue that they had, which a lot of brands I speak with have as well, was they had no type of real Google Ads strategy in place. I mean, they had a few campaigns here and there going on, which if we go over here and look at the time period before we began work, so essentially June 1st to June 30th, when they were actually running the campaigns, and which, by the way, they had a lot of issues, which we'll go over shortly. First of all, sales were lacking. And second, they had a bunch of different things going on where essentially it was a bunch of different campaigns. Specifically, if you count the total number of campaigns that were actually spending money, they had a total of 17 different campaigns. And the worst part was a lot of these campaigns were targeting the same exact products. There was no real strategy in place. It was like basically they were trying to swim in the water, but they were just splashing around in the same location and not moving in any direction. This was the same approach that they were having here because there was just too much going on, too much kind of distribution when the accounts did not need distribution. It needed more simplification. So that's essentially how we approach the brand, like we always do. First was to understand where the brand was going wrong, and clearly it was the fact that overall the account was just a complete mess. Things were on the low end because things were hacked, and now we had to start fresh by simplifying things and by making it easier for the algorithm to understand what's even going on and how to deal with it. So what we did, first step of our strategic approach entering this brand was to simplify the account. This is 9 times out of 10 what we do. And the fact is, most brand owners, they sort of question me, or they sort of question my team, asking, why are we shutting campaigns off? Why are we simplifying when the main reason why we enter the account is to scale? Well, the reality is, without simplification, there is no scale, period. I don't care what your current revenue is. You could be doing $5 million a month right now. You cannot scale from 5 million to 10 million, but without simplifying first. It's just part of the program. You have to do the first step, which is to take one step back so you can move forward 2 steps, so to speak. And that's where we began here. So in terms of simplification, the first thing we kind of looked through and understood was because they had so many different campaigns running, especially Performance Max, and also looking through the inside section, looking at the search terms they were ranking for a lot of broad keywords, number one, but also number two, a lot of irrelevant keywords. They were basically ranking for anything and everything under the sun in regards to bulk orders, and even things such as how are bulk shirts made or how to make bulk shirts. Literally, there are competition searching up these keywords. This is what this brand was ranking for. And although you may think that those are education-based keywords and ultimately you can convert that kind of audience, in the grand scheme of things, when you're unprofitable, that's the last thing you want to be worrying about. If you want to scale profitably right now in that too cold traffic, you need to focus on high buying intent keywords, which this brand was completely lacking, because in the overall time period this brand was running on Google, they had basically no type of negative keywords added. They were literally spending money on any and every keyword, which is why if you look right here with the sales track, they had gotten roughly 7 sales. Their ROI was a 0.91x, which was a completely terrible ROI. They're ranking for keywords like the North Face, which obviously is a competitor, but you don't want to be necessarily wasting money on competition like this without a strategy. Second issue, along with the broad irrelevant keywords, was the bad products were eating up a lot of the budget. So if we go on over to the product section, because this brand, they also have a lot of SKUs and a lot of different variations in terms of sizes, colors, etc. So 2,000 SKUs in total. But the thing was, the main issue was a lot of these products, although there was no real strategy backing it up, they were just running and spending money. If we look right here, this product cost $10 and that spent $170 during the time with 0 sales. This product cost $14, again, 0 sales. So they were wasting money and they didn't even know about it, which was the worst thing. And what they didn't realize is there were actually products which were somewhat profitable, which this product had an 8x ROI, and during this time conversion tracking was a big mess. That's another issue as well. So these sales and these numbers we cannot even actually trust. But if this were true, there were products here which were profitable, which should have, at least in the realistic world, gotten ad spend, but they were not, because there was no strategy in place. And to kind of top it all off, like the needle in the coffin kind of approach, they did not have any types of placement exclusions in place. So during this time, if we go on to when and where ad showed reports and Performance Max campaign placements, because that's essentially where they were wasting a lot of money, during June 1st to June 30th, they were getting a lot of impressions from a lot of different avenues. So in total, Google owned and operated was only 27,000, but in total, they had 37,000 impressions. If we kind of open up our calculator, because 27,000 out of 37,000 in the naked eye may not seem like a lot, but if we just do a little bit of math, so 27,000 divided by 37,000, we can see that about 72% of the impressions were actually going to Google owned and operated, and 27% was going to everything else. That 27% could lead to 5, 10, 20, 50 sales from Google owned and operated, because keep in mind, websites like goodhow.xyz or monkey.app or cafex.biz is not going to lead to sales. That's just the reality. Even if it leads to a sale, it will be very unprofitable sales, and you're better off not wasting that impression share on those. And if we kind of go back all the way to the beginning of the year to June 30th, we then see essentially what the overall impact of all of this was, because it was a very massive impact that it was having on their overall ad. So it does not look like it's going to let us do that. But if we change it to all time, for example, we can see in total exactly how things were impacting their campaigns. And over time, it adds up. Like all time, 5.7 million impressions, only 2.9 million went to Google owned and operated. So 50% almost. That's a lot of wasted ad spend, a lot of wasted money. So overall, if I had to sum up this account as to what I saw when I first audited this brand, which is, by the way, the first step we take, it was inefficiency, a lack of scale and a lack of proper budget allocation. They were just essentially relying on branded traffic. The 7 sales or whatever amount of sales they had actually gotten during this time was actually for their own branded keywords because nothing else was working. There was just too much going on, and the algorithm, because it did not have consistent data coming in to begin with, because things were hacked and there were just so many foundational issues, the algorithm was already struggling. And with all of these campaigns, it was basically leading the algorithm in 5, 10, 20 different pathways, and it did not even know which one was the right pathway and which was the wrong pathway. So that's kind of where we approached, and that's why we had to simplify. We had to literally get rid of the bad keywords, remove the excess activity in the account with unnecessary performance max campaigns. I mean, they even had a campaign tab called Smart Campaigns, which you can literally launch from your backend if you run a Shopify store. It's just called a Smart Campaign, which goes for display traffic. They literally had that running along with standard shopping campaigns. So once we simplified, once we got rid of the bad products, bad keywords, we actually added 4 negative keywords list in this account because that's what was needed, from branded keywords to essentially everything else that was losing money, from competitor keywords, so on and so forth. And this really kind of changed the overall dynamic and approach of the brand because finally there was some level of direction going within this account. There was some momentum that this brand was starting to achieve, and that's all that was enough to really kind of move pathways, get it back on the right track, and start scaling again. I mean, if we look at the overall conversions now coming through versus what was happening from even May, there's a night and day difference as to what was happening. So this was before we actually started work, and then this was actually July, early July is when we started making changes and so on and so forth. So things really started to kick in, things really started to work with just simplification, and this was not even adding more campaign tabs. As you can see, we added campaigns and ad spend more towards the later portion of July. But in terms of the actual campaign strategy, what we tried, let's move on to the second step of what we did, which was reallocation of the budgets. What you want to understand, I don't care what niche you're in, what industry you're in, Google Ads is all about proper budget allocation. If you want to succeed with Google, you need to allocate your budgets properly, period. There's nothing else, no magic account structure, no magic campaign tab, which will scale your brand to the next level as much as this one thing. But when the right budget goes towards the right campaigns with the right products, scale is achieved. This is literally a formula you can almost frame on your wall within your office. And whenever you're strategizing for your own e-commerce brand's Google Ads account, remember this formula. Right campaigns plus right products equals scale. That's it. And this is essentially all we do for a lot of the brands which we work with, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But what we did essentially is we wanted to redistribute this budget from those 17 unnecessary campaigns to only things that were needed. So from basically middle of July to when we are working, or when I'm recording this video right now, which is August 20th, we can see that overall we had to lower the number of campaigns running from basically 17 different campaigns to only now 14 different campaigns. That's all we have running. We shut off everything else that was unprofitable, wasting money, and we basically congregated a lot of the things together without really distributing the budgets too thin. And overall, the main strategy which we did here was to move the budgets onto more search campaigns and standard shopping campaigns with a little bit of performance match, with proper bid structures and proper restrictions, because before they had restrictions all over the place. Numbers they had never really hit before, they had set those as restrictions. So we had to readjust the actual numbers, understand their core values and what their break-even ROI is, what their scaling ROI is, etc. And then from there, change up the strategy as needed. So that's essentially what we did. And in terms of the actual campaign strategies, we wanted to go after something called the catch-all approach, where this is the basically best performing campaign running at a 7.8x ROI. This is all the products running in here with a very high target ROI. Basically, that's what makes this a catch-all campaign. We're trying to catch all potential lost sales. If we go on over to the settings of this campaign, we can understand that the overall ROI restriction for this, what we're trying to aim for is essentially no target bidding here. And the reason is we have provided it so many different asset groups for remarketing, non-performing categories. So we're trying to basically let the algorithm free and try to gather data and sales at the highest potential ROI first before we set restrictions. So that's normally the approach we take with Catch-All. Nowadays, we don't just go in and set arbitrary numbers, because that's what this brand was doing before and it was struggling. We had to do something different, and that's where this strategy came into play. Then there's the top locations. We're only targeting top locations here, by the way. You'll see that there's little gaps here on the weekends. Is because the brand does not want to mostly advertise on the weekends. Nowadays, we are starting to spend a little bit of money on weekends again, but they avoid showing ads on weekends because most of the people that actually order through this website call in. They like to chat on the chat box on their website, so on and so forth. But with the top locations, we're targeting the main countries and locations that have proven to work, mostly the United States, but different postal codes, cities, etc. within the US. Along with that, this is a standard shopping campaign to test everything out, and then there's a standard shopping campaign for the top sellers only. That's basically the 4-level campaign approach, which these are the main campaigns spending the most money and actually designed to work together to not only feed each other data on the top level, but to also be a little bit more aggressive, with the standard shopping campaigns having very aggressive bids and so on and so forth. And again, the main goal here is to feed the top level as much quality data as possible so that eventually we can scale with these top of the funnel audiences. But along with that, what we did here is we wanted to separate the branded traffic versus the cold traffic, because a lot of brands, what they have is branded traffic along with cold traffic, and then they see a very high ROI, so they think that's from cold traffic. Reality is majority of your ROI is probably coming from branded search and branded traffic. That's exactly what a lot of brand owners tell us. So to avoid that from happening, you have to separate it out, which these campaigns do, and that's also done through the negative keywords we have added in here. But once this strategy was basically set in place, along with a few search campaigns going after calls, having people actually call in versus a collection-based approach, and just trying out a few different things in terms of collection-based approaches for standard shopping as well, we moved on to step 3, which was scaling, because by this point, within 2 to 3 weeks, we were already seeing positive results. And just within the last 30 days, even if we compare it to the previous 30 days, we can see that things are looking very positive for the brand. I mean, we're up 437% in total revenue, and this number is not fully calculating all of the sales coming in, because a lot of sales are still not getting tracked properly. But overall, things are in a very positive incline and increase, which is exactly what we wanted. And to scale, what we're focusing on now is average order value, because one thing we noticed last 7 days is our average order value has actually decreased significantly, and that's actually causing our sales to also decrease for this brand by about 20%, at least in the last 7 days. So in order to now kind of approach this, what we are doing is readjusting the strategy to focus more on high ticket products, high ticket offers and sales, because that's what moves the needle for this brand. It needs to have those bulk items and that to large bulk orders coming in for it to really continue scaling at the previous levels. But in addition to average order value scaling through upsells, downsells, we are focusing more on horizontal scale, because with high ticket brands, vertical scaling can be a hit or miss, because the AOV is so high, and even if you make a small change with the budgets or the bids, there's a very good chance you can disrupt the algorithm and basically change the targeting that it's doing to not target a smaller or lower buying intent audience, which can basically make or break that campaign. So to prevent that from happening, we're taking things a bit more slower and a bit more safer by scaling horizontally and adding more campaign size. But essentially, that's the long-term vision now. Scale horizontally, focus on AOV, and keep this momentum that we have established for this brand in the last 30 days really going, because this is the first time this brand has seen some positive results in a very long time, and that's basically the main goal, to scale profitably. And again, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.